For those that you don't know me, my name is Todd, and I'm service manager in a Burlington store. I've been working in for school for around 14 years now. In this little segment, we're going to be going through some knives, cutter bar, sharpening, metal detector, just kind of do a brief overview of all that stuff. Who has not been here before? Okay. So we'll go over, this is a 492 style cutter head, that's a 494 style. We'll show you some of the differences. Some of it doesn't pertain to everybody because everybody's running a different machine, but for the most part, it'll all be good. So I'll start over here. I'm going to walk around the backside of the table here, and we'll just kind of go through some of the parts that I have laid out. We'll talk about them. Then we'll come over here, and I'll show you some knife setting procedures that are new this year for a 494 style machine. Then we'll step over here and we'll show you some of the knife setting stuff for a 492. 494 style knife comes in a box. There's two knives in the box. They are weight matched. So it also comes with a set of instructions. So basically, you get two left knives in a box or two right knives in a box, and that knife has to be spaced 180 degrees from each other. So they're all weight matched on that. It also comes with two bolts in the box. See there? They kind of have a flange on them now. It's a new style bolt. This is what the old style bolt used to look like. They're both still good bolts, they just changed to a different design. So if you are using some of the old stuff, make sure you use all of this style or all of this style for the whole drum. 492 bolt. The short ones, you can't really get them mixed up. As with all the bolts, anytime you replace knives, you're going to replace the bolts as well. Every time. On a 492 machine, when you move the knives out, you're not going to replace the bolts, but when you replace the knives, you'll replace the bolts. These are the hold down bars that go on a 492 style knife. There's two different styles that are kind of floating out there. One has the little notch in it. I don't know what the significance of the notch is. Just be aware that you could get them mixed up. Same thing. There's nothing wrong with either of them. You just got to make sure that you either run all of these or all of these, just for weight balance. There's a standard that says top, because it is somewhat of a washer, bevel washer. So as you torque them down, it actually clamps that. That's actually kind of got a spring to it. It's actually clamping the knife. Perfect. Thank you. On a 492, this is the nut bar. This goes on the bottom side underneath the drum, and the bolts thread down into it. On a 494 style machine, we have threaded bolt holes into the drum. So it's not as easily replaceable as these. So one thing on a 494, when you're working on it, make sure that you blow out the bolt holes and that the bolt holes are clean. Because otherwise we got to take the drum out and we can replace the ribbons on them, but it's not as easy as just replacing the nut bars. So just be aware when if you're a 494 owner, that make sure the bolt holes are clean. Blow them out. The other thing with bolts is we don't want to put anything on them. We don't want to put any lube on them, oil, nothing, never cease. Just put them in the way that they are. These ones have a little bit of oil on them. Just out of the package, and these ones have a coating on them that is supposed to kind of provide some lube for the torque. With nut bars, this is the ones that are being sold today. There is still some of these floating around. All looks the same. This one actually came out of that cutter drum right there. So they are out there. Just be aware that one side is a little bit longer, and you can put it in backwards. If you put this one in with this facing towards the inside of the drum, it'll actually sit on a weld right there, and won't be sitting flat underneath the drum. It won't torque up tight. So just be aware that these are still kind of floating out there, and that you got to be aware of the direction that they go in the machine. You can see some of the different styles of knives we have here. Dwayne was talking about earlier, the corner knife. You can see that it's thinner. It's actually a harder knife than our standard. You can see the difference there. It doesn't take rocks and stuff that well because it is a harder knife. That's why it's a designated corner knife. Instead of just denting up and stuff, it'll actually break off. I think they're a standard knife. Yeah. You can look at them and see that they're not quite the same. They're just a notched out, basically a standard knife. Yeah. With the half knives, if you do decide to use a half knife on some of the longer length of cut stuff, you have to be aware that now instead of a left and a right knife, now we have 4 different knives. Because there's a left, and a left, right, and a right, left, and a right, right. So you have to make sure that all of them get in the right order. You can see here on this little needle that you're going to basically stagger. So one would be that way and one would be that way. But you have 2 different left ones and 2 different right ones. So you got to make sure that you get them in the right order. Shear bar comes with new hardware, same as the knives. You don't want to replace hardware every time you replace it. Comes with it. Depending on what machine you have, it'll come with the long bolts. You might not necessarily need the long bolts because the long bolts are for a different series of machine. But it does come with it. Also comes with the washing. One of the other things that we'll show you when we get back over there is our foam wedges. Does anybody know where these go?
The shear bar
adjust. Yeah. And what's the reason? Keep everything out. These little foams are important to make sure that they're in there because otherwise it packs up with stuff. If it's packed up with stuff, it can't move the shear bar and can't adjust. The foam actually compresses. Gives you room. What do we got here? Yeah, what do we call it though? What was he calling it this morning?
the speed bump.
The speed bump. You can see the speed bump right here. Okay? Kind of puts it in perspective when you're actually looking at it. You can see that we probably got about a 1/4 inch difference there. That's the speed bump that we're talking about. So when you're in there, replacing knives and shear bar and stuff, there's other things that we got to look at. We got to look at the smooth roll, the smooth roll possibility, shear bar, cast wedges. Cast wedge sits behind the handle. Same thing. When we're in there looking at all this stuff, there's multiple things besides just replacing knives and stuff that we should be looking at when we have it open. This is one of them. Anybody know any other things that we need to either adjust or check when we're replacing knives? Sharpening stone? How we adjust that? Drum bottom? Another thing? So like I said, there's multiple things that we got to look at. It's just besides going in there and putting a set of knives in. Like I said, smooth roll scrapers, take a look at those. Smooth rolls themselves. The cast wedge is sitting behind the handle. You can see this one here starting to get all washed out. It is all washed out. There's different levels. We got our Mad Jag stuff, our premium line, and then our standard line. Same thing with the smooth roll scraper. There's a Mad Jag one there, and there's the standard line. Sharpening stones. We'll get into this a little bit more, but we have 2 different ones. There's a short one and a long one. The short one's sitting in there now. Both work on both machines. 492 is going to run the short one standard, and then the 494 is going to run the long one. You can run the long one through 494. You just need a tool because the stone will actually stick up top of the holder, so the tool will actually kind of go over the stone, so you can actually take that adjustment off. Other things to check is our adjusters. You can see that brass trunnion, you know, they start getting wore out. That's sitting in there. Things to be aware of. That one's really bad if you want to pass it around and get everyone to look at it. With that wore out, as we're trying to adjust our shear bar, the motors are actually having to take up that play and that, as well as moving the adjuster. So another thing to look at when we're in there.
What kind of hours?
I'm not sure what these have on. They're actually probably quite a few hours. We're probably talking 2,000 hours or something on there. Isn't that bad, but it's just something to be aware of. There are some thrust bearings and stuff that go on this. Everything's got to spin. The motors are pretty tough, but if we can help them out, and make this everything adjust a lot easier, it's going to make everything work a lot better for us. They got a grease fitting on it to make sure that the threads got grease, but they got to pull through it. Anvil that the shear bar mounts to. Same thing, they do wear out all the time. If you were to take this light here and actually shine it through, you could actually see air gap between this end of it and the middle. You can actually see air underneath the shear bar. It's starting to get kind of valleyed out. We have had them machined in the past, get them redecked, and you can only take off a slight amount, but to get that shear bar to mount up flush again.
Is there a dimension on the height on the...
There isn't. I think I don't remember, I'd have to look, but it's been like 20 thousandths or something, just decked it just to, basically the bare minimum. We haven't done it more than once, we've done it once and then a lot. I asked the wrong question. The only thing that doesn't have a price tag on it. Yeah. So, okay. Along with the anvil, we have our eye bolts that go along the bottom. That holds it down in tight. Keeping these pivots loop, you can see on there and on that one, we got some no-sees on it. So when that anvil's out, you want to make sure we put some no-sees on there so that thing can actually pivot in there. No-sees on the eye bolt, we'll hold it down. Older style machines probably have a stack of these 4 double washers on the bottom. Bottom of the eye bolt. Now they've done a big heavy washer. Either one works. These ones were prone to cracking and stuff. So if you have it apart, look at all the washers. There's probably one that has a crack in it. You need to replace them. Use the big heavy one now. And make sure that all that pivot's freed up. More than that thing, with the ease of that thing pivoting is going to benefit everything just for the other things we got to check too is drum bottom. Does anybody adjust the drum bottom at all when changing knives, or everybody just kind of leaves it the way it is? Are you adjust it every time? Yeah. Right? So we have these stack of shims. So as you move the knives in and out, like on this machine, you're going to adjust the drum bottom up. Or space it out, if you move it out with the shims. So that's another thing that we need to look at when they're working on knives and shear bars and stuff. Any other questions from just doing our little walkthrough here on knives and shear bar, anything, new parts, old parts?
That scraper, it's supposed to be level with the shear bar.
Yeah, I think there's actually a slight difference. I think it's just a slight bit higher actually in the machine, so it does have a little bit of a thing, but it will still basically wash out, create that speed bump. It's a relatively flush. But like I say, I think in the machine it's just a skosh higher. It should be a smooth transition. Now you're going to end up wearing out that front side of the shear bar with material coming across it before the back side wears out. Okay. Doesn't move much. It's got a lot of pressure on it too. I don't know if taking it apart once in a while.
I was looking at the part number. I have the lookup tool on.
Actually, if you look, Mike, it's in that. There's a box over there.
Oh, the part number?
Shelf. There should be a part number.
Okay.
Okay, we step over here to this machine, 494 series machine. And we'll talk a little bit about new style setting up the knives. Everybody know what this tool is? It's at the shear bar distance, right? This machine's a little bit easier, but you'll go up into the CBIS display and you will select park the shear bar. Then you'll come down here and tap on it. And as you tap on it, the motors will actually back the shear bar back out until this gauge drops in. Right? And that gives us our starting dimension. On 492 machine, you have to go through. It's a little bit more difficult. Using the CIS display, the same kind of thing. You're going to select it, push and hold the button for I believe 20 seconds, and then you can come down here, tap on the bar, back the bar back up to that dimension. Who has a 494 series machine? Nobody? Really? Okay. The old way of setting these knives on this style machine was we used two of these blocks. Our normal hold down is a washer that looks like that. It sits in the belly of the knife. And then we had these blocks that had a little tab on them, and that would sit on there. And originally, we used two of them. Okay, we set this knife in here with those two tabs, and they rested on that part of the drum, and we torqued it up. Then we would set a distance with this little bolt here. We threaded that hole and set it to there. That would give us a starting point on our first knife, and we would set every other knife, or every knife, to that height. Now, they've changed it a little bit. Then we're going to use one of our standard little heavy washer, and one with the notch. The notch we're going to put on the outside. It's going to rest on there. Regular washer is going to sit on there, and that's what's going to set our knife to the drum. We're going to do that on every one now. We'll have that one on there instead of just two of these. It's going to be quicker to set them all on. And now you're going to go here. That's going to set the position of the knife. We're going to go all the way around. You can see on this one, that one's got the little notch on there. That one's just got the regular washer. So it's going to speed up installing knives greatly. On a 494 knife like this, we don't have to move the knife out at half-life like we do on that. We can just run the knife up until its whole life and then basically change them back out. On a 492 series machine, we're going to run the knife to its half of its life, then move it out to the next position, and then run it to the next half of its life. So this style machine is going to be a lot quicker, just because we don't actually have to set everything up. We don't have to set the knife to the shear bar. We can just set it to that block all the way around the drum and go from there.
The life of these knives and the old half-life of these
It's going to be about the same. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it still has about the same amount of hard surfacing on it, so it's going to take the same amount of grinding and stuff.
So where's that knife going?
Nowhere. Yeah, but even with just that, and it's clamped in there, it has a little bit of movement, but not a whole lot. Right? At that point, it depends upon what's going through it, but I don't know, how much it matters. You know what I mean? Like, if it's
Well, I'm a gear guy.
Yeah.
I've literally knocked every single knife back in my
Yeah.
set.
we kept going. Yeah. This one has a little bit. Those ones are more forgiving on that because those same kind of styles. They have a lot of big slots. This one kind of pretty much sets it to the ground, and that's kind of where it's at. Yeah. But good question. Any other questions on that? We're gonna, like I said before, we're gonna use new bolts every time and torque them. There's torque specs in the book, and then I actually have a handout that I will give you all you guys that has some of the torque specs on it. Just remember, always refer to the book when working on the machine, as sometimes torque specs change depending on what they decide to do with the bolts and hardware and that kind of stuff. So just bear in mind that sometimes things change. Set this back on here, then we'll take a look at that 492. On this machine, or this style, you can see that they have a nut bar on the bottom, a top plate, and a knife, all kind of sandwiched in there. Doesn't thread into the drum like that style does. You can see our foam edges that I was talking about. On the 492, they're a big, wide one. You can see them on there too if you take a peek at it. Those foam edges are important just to keep that material from building up behind there so that this whole arm can actually pivot. If you build up material behind there, you can actually, believe it or not, bend these arms. The little motor's got quite a bit of power to them, and it'll just keep pulling it, pulling it, pulling it. You'll actually bend the arm because there's been so much material pushed into there that as that motor's adjusting, it has nowhere for it to go. Setting these knives, like I said before, we're going to have two sets to them. We're going to set them all the way out to the shear bar the first time, and then we will back the shear bar back out, and then slide the knives out, and then get the other half aligned. The way I would do it on this machine, just so that you can get the truest setting possible, before you do anything, is sharpen the knives completely. Before you take the old ones out, go through and do a complete sharpening cycle and put a good face to all of them. Everything's going to slowly relate to the sharpening stone. However, it kind of sharpens across the drums, however everything's going to kind of relate. So if we sharpen the knives first and get a good clean pass all the way across them, then I would either flip my shear bar if I was going to flip it around, or set my new shear bar to the face of those knives, right? And now we just set it, that bar, you have a little bit of wiggle room, true to those knives. And now the shear bar is set to the same plane as the sharpening stone. Then you can set all your knives to the shear bar. The gap on it's 0.2 to 0.3 millimeters, and then we're going to torque these bolts from the inside to the outside. You always start in the middle, Either way, you always want to start from middle and go out. Also make sure that, like I said before, that all of these, either whether they have the notch in them or not, are all the same, and that the top side is up. Those will also flatten out after a while. They are like a washer, so same thing, need to be replaced, when they start getting wore out. Any other questions on what we've covered so far? Anybody had any issues or concerns or? With setting knives and shear bar and that kind of stuff? Who has never put a knife in a machine? Okay. Any questions?
I don't have a machine.
Okay. You don't have a machine.
No.
Are you getting a machine, or are you just thinking about getting a machine? You're getting a machine? You need a 494 style or 492? 492. Okay. Any questions on what we've covered so far? I mean, everything seems pretty.
Is the half-life, this would be a half-life and then back here?
It's going to come up on the display. Good question. There'll be a percentage of knife life left. Okay, on the display of the machine. So when that gets to that halfway point, then we move them back out. It'll actually tell you up in the CIS display. Okay. Yep. So.
John, how fast can you change the set on this versus this?
This, doing it that way on the new 494 machine, it's going to be tremendously quicker. Just because of the way you're setting up with the block versus actually having to set every knife to the shear bar. Yeah, maybe. A couple hours. Yeah, probably. Or more, depending on how crucial you actually get. The key is trying to get them as square as possible because it'll take the less amount of passes right off the bat. The first thing before it goes to the field, even with the new set of knives, you're going to sharpen them until that stone touches from this corner to that corner on all the knives. If it doesn't, we won't be cutting on the same plane, and then some of that material will actually be pulling through and not cutting as well on those knives as not touching. So the truer we can get it off the beginning, the less number of passes it'll take, and then we will use less knife, sharpening strokes and stuff and all that stuff right off the beginning. So, but yeah, that way's going to be a lot quicker, just setting it up that way. So, definitely advantages and disadvantages, but that's going to be an advantage of just quickness. And then we don't have to move the knife at half the life. It can stay in the same position the whole way through. And then when knife life gets down to 0, we can put in a new set and not have to worry about moving it back out.
You can do this one in the field.
What's that?
You can do this one in the field.
Pretty, yeah. Because that one's going to just swing open too. On a 494 style machine, it'll be just like those feed rolls there on that machine. They'll just swing out of the way. Don't actually have to take the feed rolls off the machine in the field. You could actually do that pretty easily. So, good. Any other questions? What we covered so far? What's that?
What's the torque on the
The bottom on that thing? 221. Yeah. And like I said, those washers are prone to, like, if you have the thin washers, see, that one's just the thick one. That one, that might look like, see the thick ones or thin ones? But those thin ones are prone to cracking, so if you have it apart, take a look at it. I bet you if they've been in there for any amount of time, one of those washers is cracked in there somewhere. And we'll put the new, big, heavy, thick one in there and torque it up. So.
And nobody used
$2,000. Okay. So worth machining one time.
Yeah, we're adding extras.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions on setting knives?
Oh, for the place these guys.
It's going to kind of depend. I don't have an exact number. You start looking at them, and once they kind of go flat, you're not really getting that spring to them anymore. Then it's probably time. Yeah. It's not just a big flat bar to hold it down. It's actually a washer. It's actually kind of got a spring to it as well. So.
You said replace the bolts when you do the knives on this one. Are we doing that now on this?
Yep.
It's
It's across the board on replace knives.
What's the consequences of not replacing with claws? Isn't there a consequence?
Well, the bolt's getting stretched every time you torque it. So every time you torque it, you're stretching that bolt.
I'm talking if it's a warranty type thing. Is it cost saying if we change the bolts that the knife, everything's in warranty if it goes through somehow? Cost parts warranty.
Bolts come with the hardware comes with the knife.
On a 494. Yeah, in that box there, with the 494 knife. Yeah, it comes with new bolts. Yeah.
I was getting at I forget who it was, had a knife break, and it went through the machine, but it was a Claas knife, Claas bolt, and Claas covered everything.
Yeah.
The warranty.
Sure.
Because it was a Claas part that failed under warranty. They covered the accelerator, the spout, whatever that thing destroyed.
Sure.
That's an advantage. I guarantee you that they're aftermarket.
No. These ones you'll actually torque twice because you'll move the knife out and won't replace the bolts when you slide the knife out for the second half of its life. But then after that, when you replace the knife, you'll replace the knives. So, yeah. Same thing. Look at the nut bars themselves on the bottom too. Because you're pulling on those threads as well. Probably need to be replaced after a while as well. 494 you just have to be careful of because it is replaceable, but it's not as easy as these ones. So just make sure that those threads get blown out and are clean, and the bolts go in basically fingered. You don't have to run them in with a gun or anything. You can just finger tighten them all the way up and should be able to torque them after that.
When you're moving those out, are you taking them clear apart and cleaning them and then move them out?
I do. Just because. Yeah. Some guys don't, but I always have. Just for my own sake, just cleaning everything up and make sure it's all clean. And, you got a smooth surface again, not all rusty underneath, and just get a good clamp on it again. Yeah. Any other questions on what we've covered so far?
What's the most common cutter head? You always see 20, 24 knife drums.
Yeah, it's going to be 20, 24. This one's a 20. The 494s were 24.
So that hasn't changed from 492, 494. It's just a preference of user.
Pretty much, yeah. There's been different drums out there. Pretty much everything came standard with 20s on this and 24s with the 494.
We're at a 28 with half.
Yeah. There's been some different things we've done too. So, any other questions on knife to shear bar, that kind of stuff?
Typical life of a shear bar, knife, both.
Okay, let's just say there's a difference between the Cascade Mountains.
Oh, yeah. No, that's
If we're on the east side, yeah.
That's a good question.
Depends on what you're cutting.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many variables, but what are you guys getting? What are you guys getting for average time or hours on a set of knives and shear bar, just on average?
I think another year.
Yeah.
But now we went to the half knife.
So switching back and forth, these take a little bit of life out of there. Definitely depends on crops and all that kind of stuff too. Yeah, like Mike said, which side of the mountains.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Probably 25% less. I mean, you'll last 25% of the time as you would over here.
Sure.
It's the same.
Yeah.
Trinity wears knives now.
Fast.
You go up to Trinity down there? Or where are you from?
McMinnville?
Okay, some of the other things that we've talked about too in the past is cutter head bearings and when to do them, how to know if they're bad. time interval comes into play there too. Guys always ask the question, well, how many hours? You know, and I guess if we want to get proactive and do it before they fail, you know, we can do, you know, let's say 1,000 hours. I know there's machines out there that got 3,000 hours on and still have, you know, original cutter head bearings on it. But it's just going to really depend on the grease that's being used, if it's being a good grease. Also, if it's been getting grease, you know, whether it's got auto lube or not. But now we have a little bit of a procedure we can actually check and get a measurement on the play on those bearings. We can set up a dial indicator off the back of the cutter drum and take a measurement off of it. There's a whole procedure to doing it. There's some measurements that we have to take into play. You know, you actually want to set that as per the instructions, and then we use a big pry bar and watch it lift up on the corner of that drum. We can actually measure the play in the bearing. And that will give us an actual number to go off of and say, yeah, maybe it's time to do it, maybe it's not. I'll give you guys a little handout here of that whole procedure. Get everybody? So you can flip through it and read the instructions on it. It'll tell you how to do it, how to set it up. There's a measurement from the input cutter drum where you want to set your dial indicator. All that comes into a factor of where you have to set everything. Then we come underneath the drum, and we'll actually see it. I think it only moves about 2,000 or something. So that will give you a baseline of the condition that you're putting in. Read the instructions, go through it step by step. You actually have to run the drum, you know, through a loop cycle. Make sure that you know, you went through a full loop cycle. Have to slack off the main drive belt to take tension off that pulley so that you can actually pry up on it without actually having the belt pulling back on it. And then you can go through the whole procedure. But that gives you kind of a baseline of how to check cutter head bearings. So, anybody had any issues with bearings going out?
We changed one.
You changed one? Did it go bad or?
Yeah, it was just, we did that. More than we wanted.
You start getting some vibration or something? Or? Yeah. Sometimes it's better to be a little proactive and replace them beforehand. With any bearing, you have no idea. Sometimes it just things happen. You know, how many hours were on that? Remember?
Probably 1,100.
1,000 hours, and then you never know. So, any questions on cutter head bearings or that kind of stuff? Anybody else have any other issues with that? 494, the same kind of thing. Yeah. They run the same type of bearing, so. It's just reading off the drum, the height of the drum. Yeah. Yep. Any other questions on cutter head bearing? Okay. We talked about, you know, some of the different things we have to adjust and check when we're working on knives and shear bars. Another one that comes up is sharpening stuff. It's located back up here in the corner. It's really hard for us to see and show how it all works and stuff, but we've got a display that makes it a lot easier. We can all kind of stand around it, look at it, and understand how it works, and everything a little bit easier than just trying to show you when it's tucked in behind the machine. So what we have here is a hole sharpening device. If you look there, you can see the chrome rod. The chrome rod goes through this, and that's what's actually sliding it back and forth across the machine. It does so with a hydraulic cylinder in this chain. That's what makes it run back and forth across there. Like I talked about before, there's two different style stones. There's a long one and a short one. The short one's in there right now, and then we have the long one. We get 450 passes across before we have to readjust it. The short one, we can adjust it one time after the initial setting, so we can have 2 settings on it. And this one, we can get 3 settings on it. This long one comes standard in a 494 machine, but it can be run in a 492. Like I said before, the only difference is you have to have the new style tool, so when it's sticking up above here, it will actually go in. A couple different ways of setting the stone height. If you read the manual, it tells you to take a measurement off of the knife to the bottom of the stone before you adjust it, and then set the stone back to that measurement minus a ½ millimeter. So that's one way to do it. I do it a little bit differently, and I'll show you how I do it. So to start with, we have this little pawl here. We have to loosen the bolt, move that out of the way so we can actually back this back out. Because once the machine is sharpened a bunch of times, it's going to be screwed down in. Because as it's going, it's going to screw down and push the stuff down. So we go to back it out. We have a little pin here on this side. We want to move the pin to that position there. And as we back the stone out, this pin will drop in and lock into the hole that's in this barrel. That's what locks the whole thing so that I can undo this nut. If not, the whole thing would just spin right out the top. So now that the pin's locked in, I can undo the nut. And the stone will come out. There's a bunch of different washers and spacers. All the new stones come with new rubbers in them, in the box. That's what actually holds the stone in place, so use the new ones when you get it. And then on the steel spacers, there's actually a bevel to them. Has anybody ever knows that there's a bevel there, or nobody that does know that there's a bevel there? The bevel always goes towards the rubber on it, and what happens is as you torque it down, it squishes the rubber, and that's what holds the stone in place. There is a particular order that everything has to go in for that to work properly as well. On the bottom of the stone, it's going to be 2 rubbers like that. And then we're going to stick a steel one on with the bevel towards the rubbers. And then 1 more rubber. And the bevel towards that again. And the bevel towards that again. So we're going to have a stack somewhat like that. And that's how it all goes in there. Use the short one. Okay, once it's all stacked back in there, use the tool. Run it back up. Like I said, the way they show it in the book is you're actually taking a measurement off of it. I usually, what I'll do is just set the stone right up to the knife, so it's actually touching the knife, just barely. And I will go ahead and I'll torque this. There's a torque spec on that, and it goes to 125 foot-pounds. I can't do it on here, you won't be able to hold it, but you gotta make sure that it is torqued all the way properly, because that's what's pushing it in there and actually holding the stone. Once I have it torqued on there, I'll release the button. One of the important things to do is if you don't release the button when it goes to ratchet this thing, it'll break that little button off. And then I'll just give myself a little bit of room by backing it off a couple turns, to give me some room between the stone and the knife. And then let the sharpener bring it back down into the knife. The other thing you gotta remember to do is put your little pawl back up in here, tighten that back up so it doesn't back off in reverse. Some of the issues we've had in the past with sharpeners is they'll go back and forth across, but not necessarily ratchet down. You gotta make sure that the corners up there are cleaned out. If it gets packed with stuff, it'll come all the way across. You'll hit the end, it'll go back across, and it won't actually be advancing the stone downward to keep sharpening. So, sprockets, run on the chain back there. You can see that one's actually kind of molded into the chain now. They do wear out over time. A lot of times the centers of them will kind of egg shape out too. They run these little steel bushings in there. So take a check on the sprockets, making sure that they're in good shape and the chain's adjusted tight, properly so that it will actually run back and forth across. Has anybody had any issues or questions about sharpening stones and sharpening devices and that kind of thing? Anybody had any issues?
Right back the stone, I'll always put my hand just to make sure I got some.
Yeah. Spin the drum over.
Right.
Make sure that there's enough room. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or issues that you guys had? No? Okay. See the chain, replacement chains, same thing. They don't come chrome anymore. They just got a coating on them. The other thing that's coming now, again, with the sharpening stones, is these little rubber boots. Does anybody know where that goes? Okay. It actually goes around the barrel. On the old machines, or older, they actually have a dust boot now that will go over the threads of the barrel to try to keep some of the debris stuff from building up on it. As that thing advances down, it just keeps squishing that little rubber sleeve down in there. So, I know they ran it on some of the older style machines and kind of went away from it. Now it must have been working fairly well back then, so now they kind of come back to it. So you open up the box and it has this in there now, that's why. Any other questions on sharpening? You guys got it pretty good. Okay. One of the other things that pertains to cutting is metal detector. Because obviously we don't want anything foreign coming in there. These are a couple magnetic trays, they call them. They're located in the lower front feed roll. They're held in there stationary, the roller's actually spinning around them. They can be checked. You can actually test them. So if you have a machine that's questionable whether it's working or not, it can be checked. There's 3 different segments. Little magnets in a 492 one and a 494 one. There's 5 different ones in there. We can actually check the sensitivity with this little box. It can be checked in the machine, it's still in the roller, or it can be checked sitting here on the bench. This particular one, I don't remember which end it was, but one of the segments was actually dead. It wasn't actually working. So it was 2/3 of the way working. So if something metal went in across this side, it would work. And if something happened to go in on that side, it wouldn't work. So just be aware that there's always a possibility that, you know, one segment could be dead for whatever reason. So, like I said, we can check it in the machine or out of the machine. What's that?
Can you check that monitor?
You can with this right here.
Oh.
Yeah, you can adjust the sensitivity a little bit, but to actually check the numbers of the magnet on how they're working is with this little box here. And you can actually go in and adjust them a little bit too to get them back in if they're out of the parameters a little bit. So on a 494 style machine, there's really no maintenance related to this. On 492, there's the stop pawls. Actually, they're sitting right here to grab them. It's another wear item that needs to be looked at and addressed once in a while too. Everybody knows where these are located and what they do. So these are stop pawls. This is what actually stops the feeder house when metal is detected. These things are got a little solenoid underneath them. They drop down and engage on the cutout clutch. If the edges here start getting worn off, you know, it could possibly not catch on that cutout clutch and go up over and maybe catch on the next one, or maybe not catch them all. The other thing too is make sure the pivot is free so they can actually pivot down and actually catch on it as well. Otherwise, you know, it's not going to stop. 494 machine, it does it all hydraulically, so there's no maintenance issue on that. This is just something to be aware of that needs to be looked at as well. So, anybody have any issues with metal detectors? Not replacing these? Had a little bit of a wear on them or something? Or?
Skipped like 3 or 14. Then replace the accelerator.
Yeah.
Can you contribute
Yeah.
to the teeth?
Yeah, because it eventually stopped. It did stop. The detector stopped the cutter gun, but it wasn't.
Soon enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it caught on like the second or third or fourth time around, you know. And when it drops down, it used to catch on the first time.
I think it was 3 seasons back then, so
Yeah.
we started doing it every season.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're $184 a piece, but it's relatively inexpensive compared to.
More expensive the other way.
Yeah. Yeah. So everybody knows where these are located. They're on the front of the feed rolls, the left-hand side behind the tin cover. You can pull that off. Take a look at these. The gap between this and the clutch is also really small too. I think it's 1 millimeter. So it's right really close to that. So it's just barely clearing it as it comes by. So that way it can actually drop in and catch. So. Any other issues on the metal detector?
Check the metal detector.
No. No. The only other real way, I mean, you can do like everybody always asks, you know, a little piece of wire you can dangle in there and see if it's working. You just won't be able to check the sensitivity of it. So when we're looking at this, it comes up with a reference number. I have to look at the book. I think it's like 14 to 16. I don't even know really what it means, right? So they have you set this block on there, and then you set that on there, and it goes through a kind of a countdown thing, and then it tells you what the number is. Let's say like 15. And it's supposed to be between 14 and 16, so then it's okay, right? So it's checking the magnetic field of the whole thing, I guess. You know, so there's really no way to home test it at all. But if you have it out, you know, I mean, and you question it, you know, if you can get it to us, or if somebody's coming down that way, it can be checked in the machine too. You know, there's a different procedure doing it. You still hold it up to the feed roll, and you check it in 3 different spots, and it'll tell you if it's in the parameters. So, yeah. But sometimes it's just peace of mind. It's good to know. You know, like I said, this one was working, except for one side. So it was a machine that came in, and as far as everybody knew, it worked. You know, it probably did work fine. But if something was to happen to sneak around on this side, then it wouldn't work. So. Any other questions or anything? Anything we've covered? Everybody's got it figured out? Okay. Good enough.